Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our fourth international conference on the Muslim Ummah. This is our third day. Now we have our first session, which will be moderated by our friend and colleague, Dr. Abdalrahman Migdad. Abdalrahman Migdad is assistant professor of Islamic social economics at Salahuddin Zaim University. He is also research fellow at Center for Islam and Global Affairs at CIGA. Dr. Migdad received his education in Palestine, the United States, Japan, and also he completed his post-PhD in Turkey. Yes, welcome to all of you, and please, I would like to give the floor to our friend, Dr. Migdad.
Thank you very much, my friend Hadi. Hadi is a great friend, contributor to the center, as always. Thank you very much for the introduction. It gives me great honor today to moderate this, inshallah, beneficial discussion. Basically, today we will be talking with three scholars on related subjects. The first is going to be on sovereignty towards a future sultanic power. I will be introducing Mr. Owais Khan just a few seconds. And then our second topic is going to be Umma and nation state nationalization of South Slavic Muslims through the world, through the work of the Islamic community of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Joining us talking about this topic is going to be Mr. Ejub from the University of Belgrade. And then we will also be listening to our third speaker talking to us about political obstacles in the application of Shari'ah, Islamic law. This one is going to be in the Arabic language. We will have live translation. This will be with Dr. Abdul Hadi from the University of Baghdad. Before I begin, I would just like to lay out the structure of how this is going to be, especially since our third speaker is not with us yet. We hope he is able to join. I'm going to give each of our speakers about 18 to 20 minutes. Probably more, depending on whether or not we're going to have our third speaker joining us. Hopefully he does, and then we will open it for the rest of our session for question and answer. I would like to start our discussion with Mr. Owais Khan. And before I do that, I'm just going to give a brief introduction about Mr. Owais. Owais is a senior research associate at Center for Islam and Global Affairs here at Istanbul Salahuddin Zaim University. And he is also a PhD candidate at the Department of Religion at Syracuse University. He also served as a lecturer at Fatih Sultan Mehmed University, Alliance Civilization Institute in here at Istanbul between 2010 and 2012. Mr. Owais is also a member of its inaugural faculty and helped found its graduate program. At Syracuse University, his dissertation explores the theoretical foundations of modern sovereignty and the ways Islamic political theory practice can help to resolve problems in modern political theory. Without further ado, I would like to give the mic over to Mr. Owais. Mr. Owais, you have, let's say, about 20 minutes from now. So you can take the mic from here. Thank you very much.
First, let me check. Can you hear my voice? And can you see my presentation?
Yes, we hear your voice, we see your presentation, but if you can speak up loudly a little bit more, it would be better.
Okay, is this better?
Yes.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah alladhi mulku as-samawati wal-ard wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. Wa salatu wa salam ala Imam al-Mursaleen Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabi ila yawm ad-din. As a member of the Center for Islam and Global Affairs at Ejub, I would like to thank all of our incredible scholars and guests joining us from around the world, and also my fellow panelists. A special thanks to our rector, Dr. Mehmet Bulut, and also our director, Dr. Sami, for tirelessly supporting and protecting this unique institution that furnishes a space to raise pertinent questions about our region and the world. I pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserves them for their efforts. Sultanic power is the answer to the problem that any future political theory is meant to solve. It can teach political thinkers a lot about how to understand and analyze power. By using the word sultan here, I mean it in its classical sense, not in the Weberian sense of sultanism or pre-modern patrimonial monarchy. For too long, our vocabularies have been stillborn due to Orientalist and radical monopolization, the use of our tradition for their own self-interest. Sulta and sultan are one of those terms that I intend to snatch back and to seriously consider as a resource for thinking about politics. These terms undergirded the politics of our region for over a millennium. I want to draw from their vast heritage in order to solve pertinent issues facing us today. This paper is an attempt to clarify the major task for any future political theory, evaluating philosophical issues that render sultanic power today inoperative. A more accurate understanding of power will allow us the resources of our collective memory and experience in order to have more effective governance in the future. The question of sultanic power first depends on what we mean by power as a category of analysis. Perhaps that is too ontological a question to answer immediately. Another way to raise the question is to ask, what does it mean to act politically? Or at what point does a given situation leave the realm of the economic or social and call for a political calculus instead? In this vein, there's two uninteresting answers that I want to pass over without comment. The first is the one that says that nothing is political, and the other that says that everything is political. Since we must begin our inquiry from somewhere, the most common way to begin is to consider that states are the basic unit of our political world. Thus, the political means that anything to do with the state is politics. And this includes law, rules, and regulations emanating from the states, procedures such as elections or political rituals, and the state institutions such as the police or tax authorities. By introducing the state, it seems that we have only traded one abstract concept for another. Even within the state, there are some regulations that seem more routine than political. For example, consider the color of highway signs. Even such a trivial matter may, under certain circumstances, become political. However, the very possibility of the political entering in after the state was already there shows that the state itself is not the source of the political as such, but rather that the political nature of things emerged from somewhere else. Classical theorists prefer to use the term sovereignty rather than the state to pinpoint that aspect of the state which raises the stakes from things routine, such as highway signs, to that which requires true political judgment. As opposed to the state, sovereignty points to the central constituent source from which the state's apparatus are simply constituted powers. Jens Barthelsen explains how the question of sovereignty is entangled with the nature of state, or what makes the state a state. He writes, quote, the presence of states will necessarily presuppose some answer to the question of sovereignty in its attempt to classify and investigate those phenomena. Thus, our will to political knowledge is intertwined with the notion of sovereignty right from the start. If the question of sovereignty is prior to the idea of state, then what is sovereignty? For Barthelson, the question of sovereignty is hard-coded into the idea of political structure, contributing to the sovereignty's hidden yet immensely consequential potential. Any adjustment and turn terrorists into founding fathers. Sovereignty as a concept serves as a governing principle, determining the relations between all things. Its primary concerns are what are the basic units of our political world and who occupies the highest concentration of power within those units. The sovereign is the central post on which the tent hangs. It is the supreme authority within a given territory, and the state is simply its outer shell. The simplicity of this definition hides many nuanced issues, such as what is meant by supreme, or what is authority, or what is territory. Let us table these difficulties for now and return to the primary concern about the essence of power. The aforementioned view of sovereignty, while popular, has come under severe criticism in the past decade. Some theorists believe that too much focus on the sovereign clouds our ability to properly grasp what is political. If in fact the sovereign is the source of power, then changing the sovereign should change the affect of power. If we take the transition from feudal monarchical sovereignty to modern popular sovereignty as an example, then such a radical change in the holders of sovereignty should have impacted the way power is experienced. Yet, the historical shift from monarchical to popular sovereignty did not change the fundamental nature of politics. The fact that switching the sovereign did little to counter the experience of political failure points to the fact that perhaps the political is not simply another word for the sum of total sovereign acts. The most prominent theorist to study this oddity is Michel Foucault. In his 1976 lectures at the Collège de France, published under the title Society Must Be Defended, Foucault famously wrote, "We need to cut off the king's head. In political theory, that still has to be done." By this he meant that under the guise of popular sovereignty, the specter of monarchy remains in the figure of the people, who now embody the characteristics of pre-modern kings. Therefore, examples abound of modern democracies behaving as tyrannical as arbitrary autocrats. Despite the progressive rhetoric of revolutionaries and reformists, changing circumstances such as civil war or mass protests unveil the draconian features of the state. In such cases, democracies want us to believe a contradiction, that the sovereign, as the people, can kill the people in their own name. In his later work, Foucault tried to explore the possibilities of a non-sovereign political philosophy, or a political mode of analysis that did not center the sovereign. Rather, he wrote on the theme of biopolitics, shifting the focus away from the traditional understanding of geopolitics. The shift away from the territorial state allows us to see that tyranny remains despite the change of form. In the politics, Aristotle had already observed that this fact when he divided different constitutions into their just and more unjust types. For Aristotle, the ways in which rulers wielded power was more important. Each form had its corrupt alternative. One conclusion from this is that forms are not in themselves better or worse. There is good reason to agree with Aristotle. Consider the following three arguments that show the flaws in democratic theory. 1, that democracy does not achieve representation. 2, that democratic reason leads to populism. And 3, that democracies actively hide and protect elites from accountability. Most respond to the challenges of democratic theory by claiming that democracy is not democratic enough. Biopolitics gives us the critical ability to see how seemingly innocent civil, economic, and scientific situations are in fact instances of microsites for monarchical action. Foucault's work has been developed by three prominent Italian political theorists, Antonio Negri, Giorgio Agamben, and Roberto Esposito, to whom I want to turn now. I believe that the biopolitical turn in continental political theory has produced some of the best insights in understanding the political world. Without deviating into the technicalities of the biopolitical, what all three theorists that I'm about to consider share in common is a resolutely eminentist metaphysics. It is this latter point that concerns me here, because the metaphysical background shows the possibilities of their insights, but also the provincialized nature of the modern political theory as a whole. In his essay, German Philosophy, French Theory, and Italian Thought, Esposito comments on what brings these three thinkers together. He writes, the prevailing mood of Italian theory seems to be one of affirmation. Of course, affirmative thought can mean different things. Here, the phrase is meant to suggest a philosophy of eminence. The phrase affirmative thought in this quote is doing a lot of work. Esposito is saying that what binds together the work of New Italian theory is its struggle against a particular tendency in Western thought in general. It is a struggle against the philosophy of transcendence towards what he calls a philosophy of eminence. In the field of political thought, a philosophy of transcendence shows itself in the guise of political theology. He explains, and you have to bear with me, this is a long quote. I see political theology as a sort of machine, which functions by separating our life from itself, both in the sense that it negates life and in the sense that it transcends life. This machine is a hybrid of Christian theology and Roman law. It has taken on different forms, but all linked to a mechanism of exclusionary inclusion. The phrase political theology suggests the convergence of two contrasting elements engaged in mutual exclusion and subjugation. Once we start paying attention, we notice that all the universals of Western thought, including the idea of the West, obsessively reproduce this antinomial structure. And this structure, in fact, never stops operating. If this structure, in fact, never stops operating, it means that we are in the presence neither of an event or an ideology, but the way in which the order of the Western world is conceived. By political theology, therefore, it is to be understood a recurrent two-part structure, a two that is sublated into the one. According to Esposito, Italian thought stands opposed to political theology, and accordingly stands opposed to the deepest political orientation of the West. If political theology is the dominant tradition of modern political thought, what is this orientation? According to Esposito, it is many things. The religious legitimization of power, the political use of theology, the engendering of political categories from theological categories, or inversely, the engendering of the religious from the political. But for Muslim political thinkers, what is most insightful is his description that political theology is a machine that never stops operating. It sustains the antinomial structure as the order of the Western world. In short, he concludes that the two are folded into one through exclusion. Esposito concludes his article by commending Italian theory. He writes, I believe that the task of thought is to open up to its outside. It is not an easy task because it amounts to the quest for a conceptual language external to the theological political horizon. Italian thought has played and can play an important role in this task. It is a thought of the outside, traditionally oriented towards the outside, antithetical to interiority, to transcendence, to separation. Entering modern political theory through its southern shores means Italian theory lays the framework and the task ahead for Muslim political thinkers. While Italian theory may help to show us the inner workings of modern political thought, there is very little it can offer by way of solution. the quest for a conceptual language external to the theological political horizon means trying to reject the Western tradition without recourse to a language, concept, or practices that stand outside of the West. While commenting on Giorgio Agamben's work, Antonio Negri claims Agamben's analysis shows how eminence can be both realist and revolutionary. Agamben expounds on these ideas in an essay titled Absolute Eminence, which was a commentary on Deleuze's deathbed essay Eminence of Life. Dickinson explains Agamben's commitment to eminence as follows. Taking up Deleuze's interest in Spinoza directly, Agamben conceives how the principle of eminence is nothing other than the generalization of the ontology of univocity, which excludes any transcendence of being. This understanding, for its part, is built on Spinoza's elaboration of the univocity of being, its openness, as it were, over and against medieval scholastics and their presentation of an analogy of being, right? Eminence that is eminent with respect to nothing. As being eminent to something would necessarily involve a transcendent counterpart. If Western political theory is grounded in political theology, then writing against it would mean committing to a life of eminence. Agamben's entire political and philosophical and political project is condensed then within this context. The plane of eminence thus functions as a principle of virtual indetermination, in which the vegetative and the animal, the inside and the outside, even the organic and the inorganic, in passing through one another, cannot be told apart. Italian eminentists, such as Agamben, believe that sovereign power is repressive and negative, claiming total control through a process of inclusion-exclusion, much like God's power is imagined standing outside the world, only to periodically interrupt the flow of natural events as he sees fit. The sovereign, popular or monarchical, remains symbolic and intervenes over life and death, right and wrong, law and legality, illegality in rare, albeit extraordinary moments. Their reading of the political theological foundation of Western thought is not unfounded. Ernst Kantorowicz's classical book, The King's Two Bodies, describes how the sovereign possesses both a symbolic, transcendent essence, as well as a natural, biological essence. A similar dualistic medieval model is epitomized in the political theory of Hobbes' Leviathan and in Baudin's books on the Republic. Both authors try to balance the two paradoxical natures of the sovereign, much like how Christian theologians try to defend the paradoxical nature of Christ's both divine and human natures. Eminentists argue that at some point in European history, the exercise of power moved beyond this Christo-mythical dyad. The transcendent aspect of power folded into a pure plane of eminence. Based on an entirely new framework, eminentists see biopower as the form of non-sovereign power. Without reference to juridical exception, on the plane of eminence, the monarchical machinery of political theology persists with biopower by allocating for itself forms of life that are included through exclusion. The concentration camp being an extreme archetype of this kind of behavior. It's similar to Christian notions of transcendence, which sublate worldly life through its inclusion as imperfect and sinful. While much of Italian theory's insights into the inner workings of the Western political theory are correct, their use of the word transcendence gives the impression that all philosophical approaches of transcendence repeat the problem present in Western political thought. All the authors provide a Christian genealogy for the term. It is at this juncture that Gil Andijar's skepticism of the current use of political theology is helpful. Andijar claimed that I find it difficult not to wonder about the coincidence whereby the interrogation of the concept of religion, its Christian colonial history, its general imperialism was just getting started when a new phrase was ushered in as a substitute. Scholars of religion, such as Vincent Lloyd, have pointed to the deeply Christian and Eurocentric assumptions packed into seemingly neutral religious philosophical concepts such as transcendence or the sacred, without provincializing the colonial and the Eurocentric imports of the use of transcendence. Even critical projects against political theology, such as the one surfacing in Italian theory, can be problematic. To understand the Christian background to the idea of transcendence as present in the theory of political theology, I would like to revisit an episode in European intellectual history. Since the publication of Carl Schmitt's famous work on political theology, European political theorists have conducted a sometimes secret, sometimes open conversation with him. The debate between him and Erik Peterson tracks a set of complicated arguments about the presumed relationship between monotheism and monarchy, whereby strict monotheism or absolute transcendence by analogy leads to an imperial politics. In an article titled Monotheism as a Political Problem in 1935, Peterson criticized Schmitt's arguments. Through extensive archival work of hitherto untranslated Latin and Greek sources, he argued that a non-Trinitarian monotheism was invented by court theologians after the conversion of Constantine in order to legitimate monarchical government through the belief in a single divine power. This argument has been repeated by John Osman in his genealogy of monotheism in what he calls the Mosaic distinction, whereby pagan ideas of sacred kingship use cosmology as a way to achieve political ends. The arguments are historiographical, and I do not have time to elaborate the ways in which pagan ideas of sacred kingship were incorporated into Christian notions of divine right through adoption of Neoplatonism. The point is, sacred kingship has its roots within white Western European Christendom. They are products of a particular theology for a particular historical experience. These can be provincialized when put in comparison with Islamic thought. Unlike Islam, Christianity does not have a worldly and a world historic prophetic figure who is explicitly charged with an explicitly worldly mission to make friends and vanquish enemies. This lack is compensated by Christian theologians and philosophers alike by deploying theological concept for social political use. The prophetic figure in Islamic thought is an immanent figure, charged with an explicitly political mission. He not only preached the word of an eschatological future, but also was charged with a mission to implement law and governance here and now. The theory of prophecy, perhaps unique to Islam, raises its own pitfalls regarding the use of prophetic figure for imperial purposes. However, the prophet already is a far cry from Christian political theological analogies with God. The looming uncertainty around the problem of transcendence and eminence leads to two distinct conceptual strategies in literature. One is what our political theologians, which I've talked about already, this approach not only is European, but prevalent among Muslim theorists as well, such as Maududi's Hakimiyatullah. This group concedes to the transcendent element within sovereignty. Theorists inclined to this method prefer to deal directly with theology in order to rework possible political futures. Yet others, much like the Italian eminentists profiled above, reject the very idea of transcendence as a metaphysical reality, and therefore reject sovereignty in the name of a purely eminent politics. The latter strategy presents itself as more favorable in analyzing and critiquing worldly power. However, this approach only picks one side of the dyad, while keeping the paradoxical and parasitical relations between transcendent and eminent intact. Therefore, much like their rivals, the political theologians, the eminentists continue to see sovereignty as somehow bearing the mark of transcendence through its absence, and as such, transcendence remains largely an unstated premise. Pure eminentism vehemently deny being haunted by the specter of theology, yet their denial leaves their transcendence untheorized and unable to answer what exactly is being negated, lest they become a theologian. Ironically, eminentists attempt to achieve democratization of the political by taking Christian ideas of transcendence for granted, albeit through their exclusion, coupled with Eurocentric strategy of ignoring other traditions that may have radically different ideas about the transcendent. Instead of engaging non-Christian, non-European ideas about the transcendent, eminentists behave as though a rejection of European notions of transcendence amounts to a knockdown rejection of all the traditions. These blind spots in the eminent approach unintentionally sustain the problem of political theology as method, and it firmly remains beholden to it. Eminentism simply refract from overtly theological approach in the opposite direction, all the while smuggling in a Christian universalism through its blanket denial. The Christian background to monarchy and then the commitment to pure eminence as a reaction to find the monarchical remainder in the non-political political depends on the ambiguous legacy of Christian metaphysics in modern political theory. On this reading, the remainder is not monarchical nor transcendence, but white European Christianity. So I'll conclude. The fact that both the classical theory of sovereignty and its critique are in a battle with Christian metaphysics leaves us with the possibility of considering, is there a way to be committed to transcendence without importing the superficial ideas of Platonic kingship and the king's two bodies? Unfortunately, recent historiography of pre-modern sultanic power has left us crippled in the face of political theology. The first,
if we can just slow down the pace of your talk to give room for our translators to put out.
I'm about to conclude, so we can cover some of the
okay, thank you.
differences in the question and answer. Let me say, unfortunately recent historiography of pre-modern sultanic power has left us crippled in the face of political theology. The first tendency sees Muslim kingship as a different type of sacred kingship, embroiled in a mystical and occult symbolism. Perhaps the latest book in this vein is Hossein Yilmaz's book, The Caliphate Mystified. This trend is joined by the work of Cornel Flesher, Catherine Babayan, Mercedes Garcia Arenal, Matthew Melvin Koshki, and Afsar Moyin. These scholars, alongside Yilmaz, show how rulers, after the destruction of the Abbasid Caliphate, began to experiment with new modes of legitimization. These included depicting themselves, that means the caliphs, as saintly, mystical, revivalist, millenarian, and cosmological. There, Yilmaz, for instance, reads a plethora of archival sources and shows in fine-tuned detail how Ottoman scholars were constructing the image of Ottoman rule in mystical terms. Much of the argument relies on how imperial language and symbols borrowed their meaning from Sufi literature of the time. A second trend is more promising, yet has its own pitfalls. The second trend is found in the work of Wael Hallaq, Overmir Anjum, and Andrew March. These works present a more promising analysis of sovereignty and political thought. However, their focus remains on a marginal group of Islamist Salafis who advocate what Anjum has called an Umma-centric vision of politics. The Salafi Islamist reading of politics, grounded in Siyasat al-Shari'ah, is based on an anthropomorphic theology of Ibn Taymiyyah, which is unable to provide an alternative to Christian metaphysics, whose own anthropomorphic tendencies are not only the underpinning of modern political theology, but also the source of its ambiguities. In fact, Faisal Devji and Drago Stokia have shown how Maududi's own work, and by extension, most of modern Islamist theorization, imitates Christian conservative political theologians' dreams of a theocracy, such as Donoso Cortés, Joseph de Maistre, and Robert Filmer. Both trends above prevent us from taking the question of sultanic power head on. By sultanic power, I mean power that is immanent through and through, based on a world as pure imkan, or possibility. It is politics of pure contingency. So, in the end, sultanic power builds on the insights of Italian political theory, in that it is committed to a pure materiality and a rejection of any non-material objectification. Nothing is holy and permanent in the world. It disagrees with Italian theory in that it leaves room for tawhid. Muslim political theorists are uniquely positioned to fulfill the aporia of modern political thought as left over by Italian theory. The task ahead for Muslim political theorists is to reinstate sultanic power by returning to the world of politics on the plane of pure eminence without recourse to Christian notions of transcendence, which perpetuate the project of political theology. The task begins by deconstructing colonial Christian theological ideas smuggled into universal ideas of transcendence in favor of Muslim visions of transcendence that do not fall into the trap of closing down the world of pure contingency, as has been argued by Italian theorists. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Owais. You just stopped before I was going to ask you to do so.
All right.
Thank you very much for thank you very much for your talk. Thank you very much. I think this was a very interesting topic. I'm sure we're going to have some interesting discussion. But before we do that, let's go ahead and continue with our remaining speakers. Following Mr. Owais, we will listen to Mr. Ejub, who will talk to us about Umma and nation state, nationalization of South Slavic Muslims through the work of the Islamic community of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Before, I would just like to give a brief bio about Mr. Ejub, who is a PhD candidate at the Faculty of Political Science, University of Belgrade, Serbia. He graduated from the Department of Oriental Studies, Arabic Language, Literature and Culture at the Faculty of Philosophy, University of Belgrade. He holds a master's degree in Islamic Studies awarded by the same department. In the academic years 2011 and 13, he was a lecturer at the Faculty of Media Communication at Singdom University, Belgrade, where he taught the courses Middle Eastern Culture and History and Orientalism. He's also one of the founders of the Balkan Center for Middle East and became its managing director in 2013. He co-authored the book Prosecuted Islam, which was published 2013. He also is the editor of books. First was Contemporary Islamic Thought and Religion and Belief and Civic Identity, which were published recently, 2019. Mr. Ejub is also a member of the editorial board of the academic periodical Journal for Religious Sciences. He also is a regular contributor to the Yearbook of Muslims in Europe. Mr. Ejub has, I believe, has an interesting discussion to deliver to us today. He's also the publisher of multiple academic papers that were published. Mr. Ejub, let's try to deliver our talk and discussion about 20 minutes. And then I think we will have our third speaker also with us. And we would like also to encourage our participant to leave questions as our speakers deliver their talks in the question and answer section here at this platform. And then at the end of the three discussions, we will hopefully have a lengthy question and answer session to cover all of the participants' questions and ideas. Mr. Ejub, please.
Jazakallah, Dr. Abdalrahman. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah to everyone. First of all, I would definitely would like to give my thanks to Istanbul Zaim University and CIGA for giving me the opportunity to present my paper on Umma and nation state, nationalization of South Slavic Muslims through work of Islamic community of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And my presentation of this paper that I'm presenting today is just one part of the book chapter that I'm currently writing about the Muslims in post-socialist Eastern European countries that will be published by Routledge in 2021. So this is, I have to say in the beginning, it is a very demanding topic, and I will really try my best to fit in this 18 to 20 minutes. If I don't succeed in this, we can continue, of course, afterwards in the Q&A. I can add something, or people who are interested can pose the questions. So in the beginning, I will start immediately with the presentation. So in the beginning, I would like to, let's say, as you see from the title of my presentation, there are two main concepts, which are, let's say, ummatic identity on the one side and national nation state, or let's say national, ethno-national identity on the other side. As I said already, because of the limit of my presentation, I'm sure that I don't have time to go in depth to the theoretical discussion of these two concepts. So I will just briefly try to present you the definition. So let's say how I'm conceptualizing these two concepts in my work. So the ummatic identity, I'm dealing with it, or it represents the vertical Islamic identity that is guided by the Quranic message, Tawhidic principle, and of course, in the end, the ummatic unity. The ummatic identity, or let's say this Islamic identity, represent the vertical identity, and as such, it is in constant interaction with the manifold horizontal identities that every person or every of us holds or possess. But what is the problem is that in the case of ethno-national identity is that it also represents the identity that, like ummatic identity, occupies this vertical line, not the horizontal line, like, for example, that citizenship is occupying, or many other identities that we have. So they are under this horizontal line. But ethno-national identity is also on the occupies this vertical line, the same like the ummatic identity. In that sense, the ummatic identity and the national, ethno-national identities are, we can say, in direct clash, or let's say in direct confrontation very often. And this, what I'm saying, of course, is a stance of many Islamic scholars during the history, starting from with traditional Islamic scholars who had rejected the concept of tribal belonging, or let's say asabiya, to the modern scholars like Abu al-Mawdudi, Said Qutb, Muhammad Ghazali, Yusuf al-Qaradawi, and many others who nurtured a strong, let's say, opposition to the modern ethno-national belonging, or what it represents today, as an obstacle to this ummatic transnational Islamic unity. This is like, I will stop here now about this theoretical concepts. If someone has some questions regarding how I'm dealing with them in depth, in my work, we can leave this for the Q&A afterwards. So now I would go further and say something why I think also that the topic about the Islamic community of Bosnia and Herzegovina is extremely important today. Because Islamic community of Bosnia and Herzegovina today is very often presented as a positive role model in the context of present debates about Islamic reform and establishment of official national, Islamic institution throughout Europe, So, and I think that there are two main reasons why the Islamic community of Bosnia and Herzegovina is so often singled out as a positive example and role model by European countries that want to carry out this reform of Islam, or to establish some kind of, one address where, that will represent all the Muslims of that country. So the first...
Mr. Could you please slow down, because the translation, they have a problem.
Okay, sorry. I'm sorry if I'm quick. Okay, so should I go back or just to continue?
You continue.
Thanks. So I will try to be a little bit to speak slower than. Okay, so the first reason why the Islamic community is, let's say, attractive to the European countries is that, the Islamic community represents the only address in Bosnia that have a legal right to represent the Bosnian Muslims. And of course, that is an example to European state of how an official dogma can be imposed through the institutionalization of the Islamic community. Yeah? And for example, just for those who doesn't know, the Islamic community of Bosnia and Herzegovina has in its own constitution has very strict rules, which are saying that the Islamic community of Bosnia and Herzegovina is following the Maturidi Kalam and a particular religious madhab. This is a Hanafi madhab. But in addition to this, the Article 3 of the Islamic community of Bosnia and Herzegovina states that the work, apart from Quran and Sunnah, is based specifically on the Islamic traditional Bosniaks. Okay, so this is very important that we keep in mind this Islamic traditional Bosniaks, because exactly the second reason why it is attracted to European countries is, it is based exactly on this part of the constitution of Islamic community of Bosnia, where it states that it is Islamic, that they following the Islamic tradition of Bosniaks, that obviously clearly indicates that the Islamic community of Bosnia and Herzegovina today is a highly nationalized community, and absolutely, let's say, we can say to highly degree, exclusively institution for the Bosniak Muslims. So, because you have other groups in the Balkans here, which are not Bosnians, but also are identifying themselves in another, national or any other terms, So, and this is the exactly the Europe wants to achieve, and that is the nationalized Islamic community, or let's say, in other words, the creation of national Islams, like French Islam, Austrian Islam, and so on. So of course, I will go now back. I will now deal with this, how we came to this situation that the Islamic community of Bosnia and Herzegovina today is so nationalized. But before I start with this historical overview, I want to just emphasize a very important thing, that the Islamic community of Bosnia and Herzegovina and South Slavic Muslims in general, are living in very hostile environments. So the Bosnian Muslims or South Slav Muslims in general, more general, they are under the constant pressure of aggressive Serbian and Croatian nationalisms, which resulted in the past with ethnic cleansing, genocides of Muslims in the Balkans, a couple of times during the last 1.5 century. Now I will go to this, let's say, historical, let's say, overview of the development of the Islamic community of Bosnia and Herzegovina, especially regarding this nationalization. So there are 5 key, let's say, moments or periods during the last 1.5 centuries that contributed to this phenomenon of nationalization. And that is the first is for sure Austro-Hungarian Empire, when it came to the Balkans. Then the first half of the 20th century and the rise of this, let's say, Islamic modernist ulama and secularized Muslim intelligentsia. Then we had this period of the Second World War that I will not deal definitely in this my presentation, because I will not have the time. And this is the period when the Islamic community was very heavily in contact, or let's say supporting the Ustaša fascist regime of independent state of Croatia. The third period is the communist period. After the Second World War, the communist movement here in the Balkans won. So the communists came to power, and they have been in power from 1945 up to 1990. And during this period, we witnessed the destruction of religious consciences through brutal atheization, promotion of Marxist dogmatic teachings, and so on and so on. The fourth period is the beginning of aggression on Bosnia and Herzegovina at the beginning of the 90s from Serbian forces. And then fifth period is after the attack of 9/11 and war on terror, especially on 2003 when it started, and the CV programs that dealt with the phenomenon of foreign fighters when things in Syria and Middle East started from 2011 on, until today. So now I will try to briefly deal with all of these, let's say, historical periods. In the first period, what I mentioned is the Austro-Hungarian Empire. You know, after the Berlin Congress in 1878, Austro-Hungary occupied Bosnia and Herzegovina. And very soon, immediately after they occupied the Bosnia and Herzegovina, one of their main goals was to try to establish the institutions with the goal to divide, or let's say to divide the Muslims of Bosnia from the Sheikh al-Islam, or from the Ottoman Empire, or let's say from the Umma, Ummatic unity. So in the 1882, already the Austro-Hungarians established the institution of Reis Ulema, which was the Reis Ulema was the highest person, the highest authority in this, let's say, among the clergy, because this already is becoming some kind of clergy of hierarchization of institution. And then also beside the Reis Ulema, they established the Ulema Majlis, the body that was comprised by 4 members. That was done, the role model for doing this, and this law that Austro-Hungarian pushed was, the role model was the Serbian Orthodox Church and this consistorial system. After this initial steps that they, controlled the Islamic community, the second thing that they deployed is and started to do is to reform the educational system. So they heavily, changed the elementary schools and the high schools in the direction of secularization. They opened the secularized schools. So the maktabs, madrasas were sidelined and so on. Of course, after the elementary and high schools, they were, encouraging young people to pursue their education in the centers, in the universities in Zagreb, in Croatia, and Vienna in Austria. So like this, very, very soon, already in the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century, we have a very, emergence of let's say, intellectual elite, which was, more or less completely westernized and under the heavy influence of European, or let's say Western values, and Western liberal values, and they were, advocating the separation of power, or in other words, secular nation state with the separation of religion, institution, and the state, and so on, and many other things, of course. They also opened two important periodicals or journals, Bosniak and Behar. They were again highly, let's say, nationally oriented and secular journals. And then afterwards, the outcome of this was, I'm now going to the second phase, or let's say the second period, and this is when the Austro-Hungarian left, and when the Kingdom of Serbs and Yugoslavia was established under the First World War. In that period, and the fall of Caliphate was extremely important in 1924. It was a very strong influence on the South Slavic Muslims. So in that period, the Reis Ulema then was Jamaluddin Ceaușescu, who was famous Reis ulema, but he was of absolutely Islamic modernist thinker and alim. He occupied the position of Reis ulema for 17 years up to 1930, 1931. And in that period, the traditional ulema was extremely critical of him and Islamic community. For example, one of the traditional alims even was saying that the Jumhuriyet Chuvshavich is trying to establish the fifth madhab, and he was calling the fifth madhab the Ataturk madhab. Yeah? So because of course the traditional ulema in Bosnia and Herzegovina, they were highly critical toward the reformation that was going on in Turkey in that moment, and they were going so far to say that, you know, that the things that are going on in Turkey, that they are anti-Islamic reforms. As I said, that during Second World War, I will not go now because I see that I already speaking for 16 minutes. After the Second World War, the Islamic community of Bosnia became, as I said, just mentioned, literally a servant of the communist regime. So from 45 until 90, the Islamic community was completely, you know, submissive to communist ideology and communist party, which was in power in that moment. All Reis ulemas during this period was submissive to the regime. But, you know, however, the most important, let's say, phenomenon was in 1971, when the communist regime decided to literally establish, or let's say to declare, that the Bosnian Muslims and South Slavic Muslims, that they have a right to declare themselves in national terms. That the name that they gave to this newly born national identity in that moment was a Muslim with a capital letter M, because in Bosnian, Croatian, and Serbian language, the religious denomination is written with a small letter M, and the national identity is written with a capital one. So in that process, the role of Islamic community was extremely important, because they popularized and were doing everything what they could to affirm this newly formed national denomination. And one of the most important persons in that process was one of the leading alims in that period, and that this is Hussein Jozo. And we have the writings of very famous here communist historian Atif Purivatra, who was saying, you know, that Jozo and the Islamic community made it possible that the article to publish articles that are on the question of the national identity of Muslims in the journal which has name Preporod, Rebirth, that this is the official journal of the Islamic community. The authors of these texts at that time were one of the most prominent Communist Party officials who worked on the affirmation of this national identity of Muslims. So this is like, you know, and also not only through the journals, but also the mosque was also deployed for this, let's say, national, you know, propaganda and nationalization of the Muslims. So this was in the extremely important moment during this communist period, when we have a first instance, or let's say first moment, when the Islamic community is directly, you know, taking or let's say is behaving in the manner that, you know, it is becoming more some kind of a national institution than the religious institution. Okay. Afterwards, you know, the situation, you know, in the beginning of the 90s, this is the fourth period, is, you know, in the absence of other, you know, ethno-national institutions, but because the South Slavic Muslims and Bosnian Muslims with this capital M, Muslims with the capital M, they didn't have their own ethno-national institutions like Serbs, Croats, and other had. You know, the Islamic community, because of its recognized authority among the people, was an ideal platform for achieving the national homogenization in the wake up of the war of the 90s. Okay, so but beside that, today, when we say that Islamic community is a largely national institution, it is necessary to consider another extremely important fact, that the most the fact that after the peace treaty of November 95, even after the war of the 90s, Bosnian Muslims have experienced perpetuated pressures, as I said in the beginning, from the both Serbian and Croatian national politics, which didn't stop. They are still, very aggressive one. So circumstances of constant high national tensions led to the Bosnian national ethnic sentiment, let's say, being more strongly expressed at all social levels as a form of a response to the brutal aggressions that they have suffered from during the 90s, and its protracted aftermath in an ethnicized and a largely dysfunctional state of Bosnia and Herzegovina that we have today after the 1995 peace agreement. And of course, in such a socio-political atmosphere that exists until today, the Islamic community of Bosnia and Herzegovina is, still behaving or let's say taking the role of more of a national institution than a religious institution. So I'm speaking already 21. Do I have time to finish the fifth?
Yes, we can do another maybe 5 minutes since our last speaker is not going to be able to join us.
Okay,
so in 5 minutes, please.
Yes, of course. This is the last point.
Yes.
So this the last phase starts, from the, let's say, as I said, from the 2000 or let's say 2003, especially when the war on terror started. After after 2003 and war on terror, we witnessed this explosion of CVE programs. Especially also in the region of Balkan region, and after from 2011, as I said, because of the foreign fighters collapsed for Syria and other places, Iraq and so on, there was, this became some kind of industry, CV industry here. It was a huge pressure from the Western countries, the security apparatus of many Western states and so on. So in that, in that after-mentioned context of, let's say, of securitization of Muslims, the Bosnian Islam that I already mentioned at the beginning, we have to understand that, it shifted even more into this kind of, auto-Orientalism and the evaluation of a cultural historical heritage and Islamic values and identity. Especially because you have to bear in mind, beside the CVE industry and the whole huge pressure, the Bosnian Muslims, they decided that their path in the future is that they want to enter the European Union and NATO also. Yeah. So under the ghost of anti-terrorism launched in 2003, and these programs funded by Western governments and security services, as I said, we had this response from the Bosnian Muslims and the Islamic community to put forward this Bosnian Islam. This Bosnian Islam, we can say that it is used here something similar to the term the moderate Islam that we can find very often in the West. And by affirming the term the Bosnian Islam, the goal is that the Bosnian Muslims that they prove that there is also some kind of a European liberal version of Islam that is in line with modernity as understood in and lived in the West, and that they will not pose any challenge to the political orders of Western states at any level, be it related to politics, epistemology, or any other values of Western society. In this way, this kind of trampling on normative Islamic values, the Balkan Muslims, I think, personally, should, they're trying to pass this task of Europeanism, in order to be potentially admitted to the club of advanced nations. But I will conclude with this. I'm skipping some parts of my presentation now that I respect my time. So, but even if Balkan Muslims, I think, and this can be a conclusion, self-abolish their religious and their identity, it would be still questionable, let's say, that whether they would be accepted into the community of European peoples, or let's say nations, advanced nations. And if so, even if they are, admitted, there is the question of how, let's say, this self-renouncing one spiritual being would affect their inner being and psyche. Because, it's not easy to live with the burden of self-negation and betrayal of your deepest beliefs and convictions. So I will stop here, definitely. So I think, inshallah, that...
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ejub. We were very happy listening to your discussion. Hopefully we'll get into some questions and answers. Before we do so, I would just like to give a brief introduction of our last speaker and maybe just read out in less than a minute the abstract of his paper, maybe put it in the context of the discussion we had today, since he will not, unfortunately, be able to be with us today. So our third speaker was Dr. Abdul Hadi, Alzaidi. He is a professor in the College of Islamic Science at the University of Baghdad. He is also a founder of an Islamic page in the Iraqi newspapers. Dr. Abdul.
Abdalrahman, he just joined.
Okay.
You can probably go questions and answers until he is settled, and then we're going to extend 10 minutes. So I would say the last 20 minutes you can give it to him.
Okay, so we will go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Dr. Abdul Hadi, ahlan wa sahlan. Tamam. Okay, so
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
لا في مشكلة الحقيقة لأنه هو بالتليفون والتليفون ما عندوش الأوبشن يروح إنجليش أو عربي.
Okay.
عشان كذا تبدأ أنت عادي. I think we should go with...
هل يمكنني أن أتحدث صوتا فقط؟ أن هناك خلل في الصورة.
دكتور عبد الهادي لحظة واحدة، حنرجيك كمان 10 دقائق أو ربع ساعة.
انتظر إن شاء الله.
Abdulrahman, you go with questions and answers for the other two speakers, and then for the next 20 minutes we'll give it to him.
Okay, we will go with question and answers for our first two speakers. And just as a reminder, our session today was held under the title Examining Sovereignty, Nation State and the Application of Islamic Law in Muslim Societies. Mr. Owais talked to us on sovereignty towards a future sultanic power. And Mr. Ejub talked to us about Umma and nation state nationalization of South Slavic Muslims through the work of the Islamic community of Bosnia and Herzegovina. First question I would like to ask to Mr. Owais, and if you just bear with me for a second. The question, Mr. Owais says, do you think that trying to understand sultanic power primarily through Western literature is problematic? I mean, as a methodology, do you think that is problematic or not? For a second with me also. Okay, Owais, if we can address this question, basically the question telling us, is the Western literature enough to address such a topic?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for the question. I was not trying to describe sultanic power. That wasn't the purpose of the talk. The purpose of the talk was to examine Western political theory in order to understand better the political world in which we find ourselves.
Okay.
What I was trying to advocate with sultanic power was an alternative concept that could fill the aporia of modern Western political thought as a representation of the modern world that we live in. Sultanic power is a concept that I wish to develop. It is a concept that I feel is the answer to a lot of the problems that we face, but that is for a different topic. The only issue here was, in which context will we discuss Islamic political thought? Okay,
then if I may add, I was reading over in the abstract, and closer to the end, you mentioned that there is this argument that the current call for popular sovereignty require a pre-commitment to a Christian political theology. Tell us a little bit more about what you mean here.
What I mean is that the popular sovereignty as a movement works within a concept of sovereignty, which is modern sovereignty, which has its genealogy into Christian thought. Unless we can, as Muslim political thinkers, confront the issue of sovereignty as has been inherited through the Christian metaphysical legacy, popular sovereignty doesn't really stand as a viable alternative to monarchical sovereignty, which preceded it.
Okay, then you go ahead and basically mention about necessary prerequisites for a future sultanic political theory. In points, if you can tell us about that also.
Sultanic power or sultanic political theory for me is a kind of alternative vision.
Okay.
It's a future. I mean, what it will be is subject to debate and discussion amongst Muslim thinkers, intellectuals. What I'm trying to pinpoint is the philosophical basis on which we can begin that discussion. That discussion means that we have to lose an idea of sultan that has been, first of all, given to us by Orientalists. What I started off by saying is the Weberian understanding of sultanism as a kind of patrimonial monarchy. The second one is sultanism as a occult and mystified caliphate that has been given to us by the work of someone like Abdalrahman or Hussein Yilmaz. The third is the idea of popular sovereignty that has been captured in the work of people like Ovamir Ejub, and Andrew March and others. All three of these visions of what it means to have political authority are unable to answer the critique of modern sovereignty given by Italian theorists.
Thank you very much, Mr. Owais. I'd like to take you over to our friend, Mr. Ejub. We have a question, and the person is trying to ask how the war in the Balkan affects the Muslim feeling towards nationalism. And he basically says you also talked about aggressive attitude against Muslim in Bosnia. So how does that how was Muslim feelings built over time? And then he goes on trying to ask to know about the role of the ulama or Muslim scholars, how they compromise or deal with nation state and nationalism would you elaborate more on this, please? Thank you.
Just a question, very important question. Yes, definitely. In the beginning of the 90s, you know, when the war started, or let's say the aggression in Bosnia and Herzegovina started, the only, let's say, as I said in my presentation, the only institution, let's say, was the Islamic community in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Okay, so the Bosniak Muslims, they didn't have any other institutions, you know, through which they could achieve the homogenization that was needed, because, you know, they were attacked, the war is starting, you know, so they need the homogenization of the people, you know. So how they could achieve in that moment this homogenization, the only institution is there, which one? Islamic community, okay? So in that moment, you have to bear in mind what I was telling and trying to express, but as I said, it is a very demanding topic, this communist period. Because through communist period, you know, the Bosnian Muslims were completely secularized, you know, religious conscience was absolutely moralized, destroyed, you know. So in the beginning of the 90s, you know, you have this kind of, let's say, you know, national and secular mind, you know, among the Bosnian Muslims. So if you were going out and trying to achieve the homogenization of people on the basis of Islam, or Islamic teachings and values, that would, you know, not resonate among the people, because the people were absolutely secularized and alienated from the religious, you know, values and teachings, okay? So what was the only solution was that the Islamic community, as the only institution, you know, make some kind of compromise. But as we saw in the past, you know, or during the history, that was the constant. The Islamic community was always doing the compromises with the power, or let's say the circumstances in which it was dealing. So they accepted to deploy and to do this homogenization on the basis of the national identity, you know, and they put forward the national identity of the Bosnian Muslims. They even organized, they were one of the main organizers of the first Bosniak Congress in 1993, where they adopted the new name. Instead of this Muslim with the capital M for national identity, they switched and they changed the name to the Bosniak.
Mr. Ejub, let me ask this, I think, follow-up question within the same context. Maybe you can put it in the same context as you speak and take it into consideration. The question says, explain how the notion of the nation state is conceived by different religious and ethnic communities in Bosnia. And does the Muslim community identify with the concept of the Umma? And if yes, in what way?
Great, thanks. If you are referring, when you are asking me, because you know, you have to know that the Bosnia is a multi-religious, multi-confessional.
Yes.
Yeah. So the thing is that this is a great point that you're making now in the question, because the Croats and Serbs, in the history, they already subordinated the religious identity, a religious institution, completely to the national, you know, ideology. So, for example, the Orthodox Church is not even, it doesn't bear the name Orthodox Church. The name is Serbian Orthodox Church, okay? So this is regarding the other, you know, groups. So they absolutely nationalized. Regarding the Bosnian Muslims, they're also, as I said, it was too optimistic to expect that they will, you know, how to say, succeed in promoting some kind of Islamic, or let's say Ummatic identity. They also went, you know, in this way, in this like, you know, nationalizing their narratives, discourse, and everything, like the Serbs and Croats, because, as I said, this was the best option for the homogenization. But even after the end of the war, You know, they continue doing like this because of this, what I was saying, that they want to be adopted, or let's say accepted by European countries as some kind, you know, of, the member of advanced nation in Europe, and so on, blah, blah, blah. This whole, you know, concept, you know, that, you know, the Islamic identity and Ummatic identity is some kind of retrograde identity and so on. So today you don't have a strong, you know, Ummatic identity among the Bosniak or South Slavic Muslims as such. Of course, it exists, but it is not very strong. And what is even much to very high extent a very worrying thing is that even the official religious institutions, Islamic institutions, not only in Bosnia, but in other countries in the Balkans, are looking on this, you know, when someone is pushing this Ummatic identity as something which is a retrograde, you know, which is a problematic that can cause them some kind of problems with these security apparatus, with Western countries, or let's say because they are doing everything what they can to construct their identity on the basis that they are, you know, secular national state, and dealing with the Islamic teaching, they completely subordinated to the Western values and Western understanding what religion is at the
Thank you, Mr. Ejub.
Private sphere.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm just going to give one more question because we are running out of time to Mr. Owais. Owais, a question says, in Islamic political thought, who is the sovereign? God, the Umma, or can the Khalifa or member of parliament, Shura Council, be considered as a sovereign in an Islamic political system? Can you have multiple sovereigns who may clash? Who is the arbitrator? If you can give me, shed light on this, rather maybe big question, but in a minute or two, and let us reserve the remaining of our time to our third speaker, and maybe have some time at the end for another question or two. Thank you. Go ahead, Owais.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so that's a very interesting question. I think it's a very pragmatic question about who exactly will be designed as sovereign. The point that I was trying to make is that there are certain answers to this question which Islamist political thinkers have put forward. The one that has been quite popular in the last couple of decades has been the one put forward by Maududi, which Qutb also picks up on, and many other thinkers in the modern period, which is that sovereignty for a Muslim society, it belongs to God. The point of my paper was to show that such an understanding of sovereignty dovetails more with Christian ideas of sovereignty than with any kind of practice that Muslims had in the past. I'll say it again. The type of political program that has been put forward by Islamist actors in the last couple of decades the solution was that God is the sovereign. The point that I was making in the paper, by tracing back the ideas of monotheism and monarchy in the Christian tradition, shows that these ideas have more in common with Christian ideas of theocracy than they do with the sultanic, worldly, political power that has been the practice of Muslims for more than a millennium.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Owais. Just give me 1 second here for, okay. Okay, before we get into our, we give a chance to our last speaker to present his paper, I would just like to remind the audience for our next session that will be conceptualizing political models. We will have a few great speakers, and I think it will be an important and lively discussion. So do please be with us on for our next session. But right now, I would like to give a chance to Dr. Abdul Hadi. Dr. Abdul Hadi, who is the professor of at the Faculty of Islamic Sciences at the University of Baghdad. He is going to talk to us about political obstacles in the application of Shari'ah, the Islamic law. I think Dr. Abdul Hadi is going to be talking through Dr. Sami's platform, yes?
He will be speaking through the phone, but احكي معه بالعربي.
Okay. السلام عليكم دكتور عبد الهادي.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
دكتور عبد الهادي حياكم الله وأهلا وسهلا بكم.
أهلا بك أخي الكريم، وأعتذر عن الخلل الفني الذي حدث من قبلنا، وهذه الظروف لا تؤمن.
خير إن شاء الله. نحاول أن نعرض الورقة في حدود 10 دقائق، وللأسف الوقت ضيق.
نعم.
فلو تتفضل تعطينا الفكرة عن الورقة لكي يكون لنا المجال لنقاشها. ممكن أن نأخذ سؤال أو اثنين مع انتهاء عرضك. تفضل دكتور عبد الهادي. دكتور نحن نسمعك. دكتور عبد الهادي هل تسمعني؟ Dr. Abdul Hadi is talking to us from Baghdad, so there is lots of internet connections. We hope he can manage. السلام عليكم دكتور عبد الهادي هل تسمعني؟ يبدو إنه فقدنا الاتصال دكتور عبد الهادي. يعني بكل الأحوال وقت السيشن هذا قارب على الانتهاء، يعني بقي معنا بحدود 7 دقائق أعتقد.
يعني ممكن نعود إلى
تمام.
سؤال، يعني إلى دقائق 3 لكل سبيكر قبل أن ننتهي.
Okay, my friends, Mr. Owais, Mr. Ejub, I think we are gonna have an extra few minutes for each of us. And let's go back to some of the questions. Let me start with Mr. Owais. There is a question, and the person's trying to ask, do you see a connection between the classical ideas of ahkam sultaniya and sultanic powers? And in other words, how you connect them together? How can you connect them together? As you might know, the second Abdul Hamid banned the famous book of Abul Hassan al-Mawdudi. Why do you think he did this? Was it dangerous for him to let ulama to discuss al-Mawdudi's ideas of ahkam? I would like to hear your thought and your opinion about this.
I think you meant Mawardi.
Mawardi, yes. I apologize.
So Ahkam al-Sultaniya is a work written in a long history of adab and akhlaq literature by Muslim political theorists. What I'm interested in is not the normative discussions about what makes a good sultan versus a bad sultan, what makes a just sultan versus a non-just sultan. What I'm interested in is what is the idea of power that is assumed by such a text. And what it assumes is a raw power in the world by a person who has sulta. Okay. Now, after we have sulta, you can have discussions about what is morally right and wrong to do with that power. But the question is, what is sulta itself? What is that power? What is it grounded in, right? A work like Ahkam al-Sultaniyya by Mawardi is a second order reflection on an established political entity called sultan. So what I want to reinvigorate in Muslims is a call to sultanic power, not to Hakimiyatullah or Shari'ah, Siyasat al-Shari'ah, or some kind of modern neo-Sufi notions of Platonic kingship, etc. I want to go back to a return to raw power and what that means exactly, which I think is the basis of Muslim political power in this region, in our world.
Thank you very much, Mr. Owais. Mr. Ejub, for our last question, I would like you to confirm an idea I think you started talking about it at the beginning, basically informing that there is this positive view of the Islamic community in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Correct me in trying to put the idea together. Now, who does this positive view belong to? And who sees this the idea of the Muslim community and their connectedness to nationalism as positive? And is that your view, or are you arguing otherwise? This is just a question to reinform and make sure that an idea was delivered as you wanted it to be.
Yes, thanks a lot. No, it's not my stance at all. I am absolutely against this idea. But the problem is that, that a majority of, European countries and in academic circles around Europe and so on, and especially in these security services and, programs and so on, it is very often emphasized or pushed forward, that the European countries should look upon the role of the Islamic community of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Because, the Islamic community of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as I said, through all of these periods, even under the Austro-Hungarian Empire, they were absolutely instrumentalized by Austro-Hungarian rule. So they were always extremely submissive to all the governments that we had through history, So the Islamic community institutionalized in that way, was absolutely, they didn't promote anything in regard of Islamic Ummatic idea, and solidarity and teachings, or let's say traditional teachings. They were very often, doing and promoting the most, let's say, this liberal version of Islam, let's say moderate version of Islam. As I said, they started that already in the end of the 19th century, but they continued this even in the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. As I said, that then the Resulema, Ceausescu, and so on, they were strongly advocating, for example, the Reformation in Turkey, or in other places which were absolutely, modernist one, or afterwards in the communist period again. And then today we have the same, or more or less the same situation, where they are dealing with very openly dealing with many Western international organizations, institutions, embassies, this and that, So the thing is, but the main point here is that the Western countries, they see what is the best outcome of what was the Islamic community has done is this creation of Bosnian Islam, national Islam. So
yes.
we want to, let's say, replicate this idea of nationalization of Islam to establish some kind of French Islam, Austrian Islam, and this and that. And this is their goal. And then, you know, and then because of this, they are saying, okay, let us look to Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Islamic community in Bosnia and Herzegovina, how they have done this, and let us take some know-how and, you know, to try to use this know-how in our countries to establish this kind of, you know, national Islam.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Ejub, for making this clarification. Thank you very much to our speakers.
السلام عليكم أستاذنا الفاضل.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
معك دكتور عبد الهادي. أعتذر أيضا عن الخلل الذي حدث.
نعم، أهلا وسهلا دكتور عبد الهادي. دكتور، نحن وللأسف انتهى وقت الجلسة، وبعد قليل يبدأ وقت جلسة أخرى، فأنا مضطر أن أعتذر لك عن يعني المشاركة. نعم، أنا أعرف أنه المسألة والمشاركة ليست بالسهلة، لكن نحن كل الأحوال قمنا بالتعريف عن حضرتكم، وأيضا قمنا بالتعريف عن فكرة الورقة التي
سمعت ذلك ووصلني.
نعم، وإن شاء الله ورقة الدكتور ستكون موجودة وسوف تنشر وتترجم باللغة الإنجليزية، وإن شاء الله تكون متاحة.
جزيل الشكر والامتنان، وأكرر اعتذاري عن الخلل الذي حدث.
أبدا أبدا، حياكم الله دكتور، ولا بأس أكيد إن شاء الله، وإن شاء الله تكون لنا فرصة أخرى
إن شاء الله
وتنضم إلينا وتكون المسألة.
أدعو لكم بالموفقية الدائمة، وفقكم الله وأصلحكم.
جزيل الشكر لك دكتورنا، حياكم الله.
مرحبا.
السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
Okay, so this was our last speaker in final attempts to try to join, but unfortunately we are out of time. I would like to thank our speakers and just remind our session was under the title Examining Sovereignty, Nation State and the Application of Islamic Law in Muslim Societies. And I would really like to tell everybody that our second session is going to start very soon. And it will be under the title Conceptualizing Political Models. Thank you very much.
Abdalrahman, one more announcement.
Yes.
The session tonight will also have not only Arabic translation but also Turkish translation. For our Turkish audience, they can turn to the Turkish translation.
Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Sami. So as we heard from Dr. Sami, so there will be also Turkish translation, Arabic, English and Turkish, so that would allow for more audience to join us, inshallah. And by this, I would like to actually thank Center for Islam and Global Affairs for this great organization, particularly Dr. Sami, who has put lots of personal effort into making all of this happen. So thank you very much to Dr. Sami, to the center, and to Istanbul Sabah ad-Din Zaim University. Thank you very much to our audience and for your kind questions, and thank you once again to our speakers. Jazakumullah khair, and we hope to see you in other events held by CIGA and Istanbul Sabah ad-Din Zaim University. Assalamu alaikum.